That um, well, I guess the first reminder is that we are recording this meeting to have for our records. But if you could go ahead and put your name and organization or affiliation into the chat, that would be wonderful so we know who is here. Um, so please feel free to just type your name and affiliation into the chat and we'll get started in just another minute or so. It looks like we've still got 5 or 6 people who are starting to log in. So welcome. Welcome, everyone. It looks like folks have been putting their name and affiliation into the chat. We're really excited that you're here to join us today. Feel free to take a minute to grab your lunch or cup of coffee or whatever you need. We're going to get started here shortly. And if you haven't yet, put your name and affiliation into the chat. And we're really thrilled to have everyone here. Okay, it looks like we've got almost everyone here. We know people are continuing to join, but we just wanted to extend a warm welcome on behalf of Southern Maine Agency on Aging and behalf of Cumberland and York counties. We are really excited to have another exchange event today, which is our chance to connect with one another and share resources, information, and services on behalf of older adults. I'm going to do just a really brief introduction again about the exchange and why we're convening this group and what we hope to get out of this group as we continue to connect together. And then we will, of course, turn to Deqa, who's our keynote, and we're so thrilled that she was willing to come and share her insights with us. It's going to be a really special hour, hour and a half. And thanks everyone for continuing to put your name and affiliation into the chat. We are just excited to see everyone. So I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So just a reminder about this group. So we are convening this group of senior service providers in York and Cumberland counties. We have had 2 meetings to date. The first one, which was in May, was an opportunity for us to just get together and have a couple of different breakout groups and talk to one another about what we were seeing on the ground in communities. Then we had another connecting this summer over Zoom, and we talked specifically about housing. And we've been thrilled to see even more conversations about housing popping up both statewide and locally. We know that there's a lot of efforts to help seniors in particular find and connect with housing. And again, just as a reminder, Southern Maine Agency on Aging started this group because given that we all serve older adults, caregivers in our community, we felt like it behooves us to get together and make sure that we are regularly connecting, sharing resources, understanding where gaps are so that we can work together on behalf of the population. And again, really thrilled that Deqa is here to join us today, so we're going to hand it over to her in just a minute. We're going to again do some breakout groups to network and exchange information, and then we're going to come back to share takeaways and some upcoming opportunities. So if there is something you want to make sure you share with the group, you're also welcome to put it in the chat right now. We want to make sure that we capture any upcoming events or resources. So again, the chat is another great tool to use. And Bistra, do you feel ready to do the poll really quick, just so we can get a pulse of the room? Is that something we're ready to do? Great. Okay. So Bistra went ahead and just popped that up for all of you. So today we've got our choice for breakout rooms. There are a lot of different topics that we have been hearing about from community partners and providers. So go ahead and vote for your top up to 5 choices that you would like to see for breakout rooms. And then we will incorporate that when we break out as groups. So we've got housing, social isolation and loneliness, transportation, volunteers, winter response as a community, behavioral health, culturally sensitive services, local response for older adults, or maybe there's something else that's on your mind. So it looks like responses are starting to come in. And we've got 17 of you have responded so far. Oh, now 22. So we're getting closer. We'd love to have full participation. And folks are still continuing to come into the waiting room. Again, this is really helpful because it will inform what our breakout groups are today. And just a reminder, if you haven't yet introduced yourself in the chat or your organization, now is your chance to do so. We want to make sure we know who's here in the room.
Hi, this is Orion Breen. I'm board president of South Portland Chamber of Commerce, and just wanted to give Deqa Dhalac and the city of South Portland a shout out for actually building housing for seniors, and would like to see more of that in other communities as well.
Yay, fantastic shout out. Thank you so much. And then the one announcement we wanted to make that is new and different from the last time that we connected is that we have been working on creating an email exchange list in addition to this exchange group. So many of you have told us that yes, you would like to be on an email exchange where you can share resources, information about what's happening in your own community, or perhaps you identify a client who needs some additional assistance. So I just wanted to share with you that we will start to add you to this email distribution list, and it will include visible contact information for all of the exchange participants who have chosen to be part of it. We will maintain this email exchange list, but you can initiate any message at any time by replying all to that. You might want to change the subject line of the email to let us know what it's about. And again, you are encouraged to use this email exchange list to freely share resources, events, announcements, maybe a local need that you're seeing, and also to problem solve. And we do ask that you de-identify any older adult cases or personal information, but really the purpose of sharing maybe a case that you're working on via email is to brainstorm needs and resources with a variety of partners and perspectives that you see on this call today. So we are launching this in just the next few days, and we ask that you are patient with us because we'll just be trying this out, and then we'll reconnect in a couple months to see how it's going. But we are excited to, again, continue to get the word out about resources that we know are available. So now that we've done just some brief introductions, I would love to hand this over to Deqa, who is joining us today. We are so thrilled to have her. She has many different hats in our community here, but today she's really here to just talk about the importance of connecting together on behalf of a community. And I know, Deqa, you have many examples of this and many years of experience. So thank you so much for joining us. And you're on.
Oh, thank you, Megan, for inviting me to your space. And thanks to also John, who started this conversation uh, from day one and wanted me to be coming in here and have a conversation with each and every one of you. I was looking at the chat and I saw that there are so many nonprofit organizations that are really doing a great work in not only in Maine, but also throughout this country. And I just want to give it a shout out to all of you for the work that you're doing is providing a way for people to work together, to be honest, and to uh, do a common good for all our communities, and you saving lives. That's the other thing that I wanted to really shout out for you guys on the work that you're doing. I used to work for a nonprofit on and off, and for the past couple of years, I was working for Department of Education for the state. And I couldn't handle it. I said, this is too much, too many red tapes, and we cannot, push the work that we want to do and work for human beings. So I went back to my roots for nonprofit. So now I work for Gateway Community Services, and I am the Assistant Executive Director for the organization. And this is an organization that provides services to families and also elderly communities from the immigrant community. We have a big space, those of you who might not seen Gateway, that communities can come and meet for free. So we have elderly folks from our immigrant community who come here and really just chat, drink tea, get to know each other in those kind of ways. So I just wanted to give shout out to you, all of you who are doing the amazing work day in and day out. I know it's not a lot of money that we get from it, but we love what we do. My name is Deqa Dhalac, as Megan stated. I am originally from Somalia, East Africa, those of you who don't know me. I lived in the United States close to 30 years now, and I have been doing a lot of work supporting communities, especially immigrant communities, ever since day one that I came to this country. And I started in Atlanta. Then I moved here in Maine, 2005, working with actually community in Lewiston urban area. And then I get a job at City of Portland, where I had the opportunity to work with amazing Deqa Dhalac here, where we have seen a lot of families in the immigrant community who did not understand, how to discipline their children. And DHS was really taking the children, and it really affected the whole family and also the whole community. And we had a lot of elderly folks who were really were sad about that, because they've seen their grandchildren taken away. So they were having a hard time really even communicating with other folks, because they felt shamed and they felt like they failed because they are the head of the household. As an elderly folks in our culture, we respect them 1000%, and what they say goes. And now they felt that they really failed their families. So we really did a lot of work together, thanks to Opportunity Alliance at the time. Deb, you were with Opportunity Alliance, right? It's been a while, oh my Lord. So we really did a lot of education around that and really bring the community together. And Megan asked me to talk about a little bit about the importance of, coming together and working together. And in my culture, and also many immigrant community members' culture, working together and being together and eating together and meeting together is a huge thing. It's a cultural thing. It's a tradition thing. And also working with those community members who really are caregivers, and also something that is very unique and big to us. And we have been doing this not only now, but also 1,000 years. And we bring that culture here as well, and making sure our elders are being taken care of. And that's one of the things we do here at Gateway, open our doors for elderly folks to come in and talk and have that space so that they don't feel isolated, especially when you are, language barrier and cultural barrier. So it really brings them joy to have that dialogue and breaking bread with other folks who speak the same language. So we are trying to broaden in that. Right now we have Rwandese community elderly folks coming in. So we are now looking into the Afghani community to do the same thing and meet here in our space. Some of the organizations that we work with during my time at the city were also communities who were just bringing their voices up at that time, and we're not really understanding how to navigate this system that we have in the United States. So we kind of also not only educate them how to navigate the system, but also those caregivers and the service providers that work with them as well, especially when it comes to healthcare, right? It's huge, and people do not understand sometimes what is happening and how they can really talk to their doctors and what to ask, what questions to ask, especially when you're an elderly people. So we really work with different community organizations, ethnic community organizations, ECBOs, to really make sure when they are having elderly folks going to the hospitals or doctors and navigating those systems, not to just go as an interpreter, but also as a cultural broker, so that they can take those hats off of, when you are an interpreter, you have to say exactly what comes out of the service provider's mouth. But when you are a cultural broker, you can really move those hats around and say different things and making sure people understand where this particular patient client is coming from. I don't know how you wanted to set it up, Megan. For me, I can talk all day, but if people have questions, I don't mind also if they just interrupt me. I don't know how you set it up on this.
Yay. Deqa, I think we too could listen to you speak all day, so you are definitely on the right track. I think we definitely want to invite questions from the audience, and people are welcome to just go off of mute. And I know one of the questions we did have too was just any advice or things that, again, you think we should know as older adult service providers. What should we know to enhance our own cross-cultural work, and how can we just enhance those partnerships?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful question. And, usually we're coming into spaces that we do not know who these other folks are. And sometimes we assume as human beings for things like assumptions. I've heard so many assumptions. One of them were, hey, Deqa, so-and-so is from Africa, another country like Zambia. Don't you speak the same language and understand their culture? I'm like, no, Africa is like a continent with almost 50 plus countries and 3,000 languages. So I can't assume as an immigrant person, somebody coming from, Angola or Rwanda, their culture, I can't assume that. So it's always good to have that conversation and ask, what's your culture? How can I support? How can I help? And in the American culture, I've seen a lot of people kind of afraid sometimes not to offend people, but we will not learn anything if we don't ask the questions. I've seen a lot of good friends of mine who are white who said, I don't want to ask questions because it might offend that person. I ask questions. I'm learning. I've been in this country for 30 years. There are things that I don't know, so I always ask. But there are ways to ask, and I also do a training for DEI trainings, and we always talk about how to bring people in instead of calling people out. Call them in instead of calling them out. So there are always really appropriate ways to ask questions while being humble, and as well as have empathy for whatever that situation is. So always ask the question in a way that's okay and easier and understanding. I can give you an example, quick example. When I used to work for the city of Portland, I used to go to health appointments with clients. So one day I took this young lady, a Somali, very religious woman with big hijab on, and I took her to her OBGYN doctor, and the doctor asked, do you have multiple, sexual partners, men, women, and all of that? So I get stuck. And the doctor at the time was looking at her computer, and she felt that I paused for a minute, and she looked at me, not saying anything, but like, what are you doing, lady? Say what I just did. So I did that. I'm like, just do it. So I did it. And that woman who did not speak English, really, I think the only words that she knew may have been the F word, and she dropped it to the doctor. And the doctor was very, very surprised that this woman said this thing to her. So I told the doctor, I'm going to take my interpreter hat off now. I'm going to put my cultural broker hat on. And it would have been better if you asked the question by saying, hey, I asked this question to all my patients, whether they are Muslim, Christian, Jewish, whoever they are. I just ask men, women, all of them. And it's not something that I am only asking you. If you ask it that way, this patient would have answered differently than the F word that she gave you. So let's just make sure we ask folks in ways that are, open and not offensive, if you will, to their culture and to their religion and also their ethnicity. I think there is a question in the chat. I don't know.
Yes, Martha would love to know more about the cultural brokers that you referenced. Are they trained community health outreach workers? And how might we be working together with community health outreach workers?
Yeah, so right here in Gateway, we have at least 5 community health outreach workers, and they are all trained to be cultural brokers, and we're really very lucky to have that. And I think it's easier to do that these days than, I'm talking about 10 years ago when cultural broker was not a thing at the time. But now it's even, we don't have many, if you will, but we are getting there. In Maine, we are really getting better and making those trainings available for community health outreach workers, so that they can really educate both sides, especially for the immigrant community members as well as our service providers and caregivers, because it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street, because there are so many things that our community members do not know that we really try to explain and teach and educate about them when it comes to different communities that are hosting us in their homes in this state and in the United States also. Great question. So for me, I believe it is really very important to bring together and collaborate with different organizations and agencies, and also more importantly, to include the community these organizations serve. So if we are just collaborating just from each other, we're really missing out to have the communities to have a seat, because they holding a stake as well, so the success of those organizations included when you include those communities and ask them the questions that how to better serve them and how that looks like. And often we forget to include community leaders in the conversation for the well-being for their own communities. So let's always, keep that in mind. If we do that, then we will be all successful to serve those communities that we all serve. So there's also many organizations that serve families and children, and I talked about that earlier. And for the assumption piece, oh, this person is a Muslim, therefore they have the same culture and they pray similar. actually know there are Muslim. My best friend is Muslim. Deb knows Abir, and Abir does not wear the hijab, but she's as Muslim as I am. So always we have to be mindful about those communities that we serve in.
Hey, Deqa, John
Hey.
Holland here. How are you?
Good to see you, John.
Good. Yes, nice to see you again. It's been a while. So I remember back when we were working together at the Center for Grieving Children, that a lot of the families, the new Americans that are here, are multi-generational. And so while we worked with the children, oftentimes there were parents or even grandparents who were isolated at a lot of levels, maybe language-wise, just being able to get out. Part of our strategy and our mission is to work with older folks, and one of those sort of critical social determinants of health is loneliness. Not to mention that we have many services we could offer. Is there a thought about how we might get connected to those folks?
Yeah, I think you hit a good point. We have so many elderly community members in our community, or when I say in our community, I mean the immigrant, as you mentioned it, John, and they are isolated, and especially isolated with this state that has brutal winters that they never experienced, coming from Africa or other countries in the world that did not have any snow. So they even when it comes to wintertime, they get even more isolated and more, depressed. And we've seen a lot of our elderly community members going through some mental health. And I've seen that with my own mom. She couldn't handle it by being here. So she left about 7 years ago. She's like, I can't handle this. So she went back to Somalia. And now she is happy because she is in a place that everybody speaks the same language, and she doesn't have to worry about falling down or to the snow. So we have a lot, but we also have, she has that opportunity to leave because she's a US citizen, but we have many asylum seekers and many people who are not legally can leave and come back in this country, who are really stuck. So we try, for what we do here in Gateway, to open those doors and have them to communicate and talk to each other, and at least that helps a little bit. And the many community members that, as you talked about, John, is going through that, and it was really hard, more than ever for the past couple of years because of the COVID, and we lost a lot of elderly folks with COVID. This past year, a lot of elderly community members, because the fact that we have been talking to the CDC 5 months to the coronavirus, and the state was not understanding where we were coming from. So they had to see the data, and I hope all of you must have seen it. We were the highest in the country that COVID was affecting Black and brown people, highest in the country. And that is when CDC said, whoa. And that's after we lost a lot of elderly people died because of this generational communities that live together. So the state was not looking into this housekeeping people who are taking care of the sanitation of the hospitals as essential workers, if you will. So they were getting the COVID from the hospitals, coming to their homes with their generational family members, like grandparents, daughters and sons and wives, and giving to them because they did not have a places to isolate. So that is where you see now a lot of fundings going to ethnic community-based organizations, because we work so hard to say we need culturally appropriate ways to fund ECBOs so that we can take care of our community members and isolate those who have COVID so that they don't take it to their families and infect all their family members. So it is there. there is a lot of organizations such as yourselves who are doing a lot of work to kind of break that isolation. But I think it would be a really great idea to bring, immigrant community members and also other elderly American community members to come together and really break bread so that at least all of this, divisive things that we have can really be, out of the way so that people can just understand each other and talk to each other and just be a company for one another. It's a good question, John. Thank you for bringing
Great.
that up.
Yes, thank you.
Is there other questions that we have? Or I don't know.
Deqa, one other question in the chat that is somewhat related to what John was asking, and we probably have some more data digging to do on our end, but Madeline is wondering what percentage of the immigrant population is over the age of 65 and or folks who are part of an extended family unit or on their own. And again, you might only be able to speak to the Somali population, right? But just would love to hear any.
That's a good question. I don't have that data. I wish you guys have that data because you're the Southern, Agency of the Aging. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I know at least there are elderly community members in each community that we have. Congolese, Somalis, Sudanese, Iraqis, Afghanis. I think there is a large, but again, this is another question that we ask the state when we are talking about, show us the data, how many immigrants that are here and how many Black and brown people that are here. So usually when we are talking about the critical issues, the state would always say we don't have any data yet. So hopefully the Office of Population Health that was just created for the state will be able to really have those numbers for us maybe in a couple of years.
I have a question which the organization that I represent works primarily with adults with disabilities, intellectual and developmental disabilities, so autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. And I imagine, just as the question just asked about folks over the age of 65 and immigrant and refugee populations, there isn't necessarily a sense of how many folks we have in the state of Maine from those communities who are impacted by intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I guess this is more of a statement of interest in particular, because the folks that we support tend to age out of our programming at around 60, 65. And nationally, one of the tidbits of statistics that we've been able to grasp onto is that over 60% of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities live with a family caregiver over the age of 65. So that intersection there is meaningful, I think, to everyone here, looking at the caregiver population who also needs care.
Yeah, good point, Pam. And I think now we have more than ever caregivers in the United States, more than ever now. And for my culture, when we have somebody who has a disability in everywhere, whether it is intellectual or physical or, mental, we just care for them at home. Number one, back home, there was a lot of stigma on that. So people just keep those people and take care of them at home. And now it changed, the culture changed. When we came here, we are like, I don't know if this caregiver is going to be taking care of my mom or my brother or my child. I don't trust them. Therefore, we really take care of them at home. I know so many community members who are doing that. And when we asked them, why are you doing that? Their answer was like, I don't know what they're going to do to my, loved one. I don't trust them. I don't know them. What cultures are they using? How many people? It's really, really shift of a different perspective back home, like stigma. I don't want them, being out. I just kept them somewhere. And here, like, I don't want them to go anywhere. But I think our community are kind of being more open-minded for the past 6 years, I would say, and they allow that, other people to really care for. And especially when immigrant community members open houses like home health cares, then they said, okay, I know John, he's from my country, therefore I'm okay to give my child or my loved one in his organization to care for them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there one or two more questions for Deqa? Feel free to go off of mute.
Before somebody say, I would also want to give you an advice in general. Don't be afraid to go to different events. We have a lot of events here in Gateway. There's a lot that is going on with the welcoming immigrant welcome center. Go to those events, put on your tables and say, hey, this is what we do. People love to see other folks who are doing good work in the community, and they just want to see you and hear from you. Usually we tend to advertise in websites or social media and things of that sort. It's really good to meet people in person and tell them who you are and what you do. And if you guys want to come to have an event here, we are more than happy to do that. Actually, we're working with Maine Family Planning to host some workshops about women's health, reproductive health, because people are hearing different things. So we want them to hear from the experts and what they do. And, that way the collaboration can really go far. And especially when you have some folks that they trust that are on the table and they said, oh, okay, Deb is inviting me to be in here. And I've known Deb for a long time. So my trust is on her. I will go. I will not say no to that. So it's really, really important to not shy away for trying to learn what other organizations are doing.
This is Martha. May I say something too about that subject?
Yes, please.
Okay. The Portland Adult Education has something called the Culture Club. In the last several months, I think I went to 4 evenings where we learned about different countries, I think all in Africa. And the next series is November 16th and December 14th. It's in the evening at that high school on the name Warren Avenue area. So it's Portland Adult Ed. So I think you can find that information online, and it's called Culture Club. And somebody on those evenings will talk about their own countries, and they, in the past, have often fed us.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love what they do at the adult education. They bring so many different services and community members, and I went there so many times to talk to the students. It is really a good way of going there and participating in that. Yeah, it brings that different culture, right? And just understanding other folks and their cultures, and being sensitive to the general differences. And it's also what gives us a strength to learn and to build those relationships, especially for our elders. I mean, we don't use older people in my culture. We just say, this is our wise human being that we all came from. And it's just, the culture is so different here. The old elderly people, what they said goes in my culture. Nobody can say nothing. You can't. That's it. It's done deal. If it's wrong or right, that's it. It's done. People get married because their grandparents said, I want you to marry this person. And they couldn't say no.
Mayor
Yeah.
Deqa, I know I'm younger than you, but maybe I can say something.
Yes, please.
curious. I work for the municipality here in Biddeford. And I'm curious if you feel that you in South Portland have a strong sense of who your immigrant residents are and how you identify those people. I think that's a challenge for us here. We don't have really strong data to know who's here and how to, therefore, how to connect with them or what needs they might have.
Yeah, I think, again, it is when it comes to data collection, the state of Maine is really don't have that much, especially when it comes to Black and brown folks. And I also think that in this time around in 2021, we were trying to collect the census. There was also something that was coming from the Trump administration's that put a lot of fear on people to even, fill out their census. So it did not even move a bit, which is really a surprise to a lot of us. But it is difficult, and we know, as you know, we have that the elderly committee that we have in South Portland, and most of those people are white. I mean, hardly we have any folks of color in it. But they did a good study, and it was all based on, what we have in South Portland. But when we talk about the specific data on immigrants or Black and brown folks in South Portland, elders, we don't have that. And hopefully we will down the road. But I think it has to come all the way from the top, from the state level. And hopefully the Office of Population Health will be able to really do something statewide so that we can really have places to start where folks are and what's the numbers of different folks that we have in different cities. Yeah.
Any last final questions?
I do have one.
Go, Madeline.
So my question is, one thing I wanted to mention was there was a Day of Democracy last week at the Jewish Community Alliance, and it was in conjunction with the Immigrant Welcome Center. And I saw Raza Jalali was on the news about that. And because we have other things like Diaper Bank, and we have the Refugee Resettlement Program, through Hyatt's, and we have an essentials pantry. So we have a lot of things going on for all ages. So that happened. But one of the things that I'm wondering about is there some effort to have people register to vote if they're in that position? I know, like, we have refugees who are eligible to work, but then there are asylum seekers that may not be, right? So there are different rules and regulations. I just wondered, is there an effort right now for those people that are eligible to sign up and vote, all ages?
Yeah, yes. That same day we had a Get Out the Vote meeting here at Gateway. So we couldn't make it to that. So there was a miscommunication, and we were talking to Riza, but we couldn't cancel. So there was good number of people that went to both of them, which was really good. And this is some of the struggle that we have as a community leaders, how we can have our communities to get out the vote. Most of our community members, and for the past 10 years, there was a big initiative about League of Women Voters to be on those ceremonies when people become a US citizen, to be right there and register people to vote right away. And I think right now there is a new initiative from the Secretary of State's office that once you get your driver's license, you have that automatic way of just registering to vote right away. Even if you are from another state, you can do that. So there's a lot of initiatives out there for the Get Out of the Vote, but we always had a very struggle, especially for our elderly community members, to vote. Number one, they do not know anything about who is running for office, number one. And you know what? I also find out many of our American young people, white young people, younger than Tim, obviously, do not know who their local city councilors or local school board members. And that really makes me angry sometimes. I'm like, you gotta learn, because you have a stake at this, and your money is going to the city and your taxpayer. So a lot of people do not know that. And there was a time that immigrant community members were only voting for presidential elections. So it took us a very long time to educate them about the importance of local government and how everything starts locally. So now they really understand to be participating in those get out of the vote. But always the problematic that we struggle, I should say, that we see is the language barriers. And many of our community members just listen to their family members and say, okay, you vote for this person because they have the same values as ours. And that's how most people vote. But it's been good, you know, when it comes to registering people to vote. And it has been that way, but the problem was people getting out and voting.
Right, so there is probably some effort to reach people now if they need a ride or whatever. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
things in
so
place.
a lot of initiatives is also happening from Maine Voices, and a lot of different organizations get fundings to provide transportation for people to go. But also easier now, people are doing the absentee ballots.
Right.
Which is really even making it easier for people to vote. But if those get restricted, then we will lose a lot of folks who may otherwise voted in absentee ballot.
Right, no, that's great, because what came to mind too was that I saw in the news, like Pius Ali was that this thing for the homeless population. They're trying to reach people through that. There's someone that organizes that had been homeless, and I thought that was great. And also the Maine State Prison, the Shana Bellows, you know, she's Secretary of State, went over there. Initiatives are done now, so all these different groups are having that happen. So that's great.
Yeah, and that's the best part, right? Megan started with the conversation, working together. When everybody works together, you know, we see success for everything and every service that we can provide to anyone. Yeah.
Well, that's great, representing everybody. So thank you.
Yes, of course.
Hey, thank you so much, Deqa. I think if we were in person, we would all be giving a standing ovation right now. Yes, we can't. I just wanted to express gratitude on behalf of this group and the agency, and just thank you for your continued incredible community service here in Maine. Yeah, we are so fortunate to have your leadership. Thank you.
No, thank you, each and every one of you, for doing the hard work, for providing services to those who might otherwise may not be able to, you know, get around or may not have voices, as Pam talked about. So you're the heroes here. You're the ones who are doing really the work. And I thank you for that. Really, thank you.
Thank you so much, Deqa. I love the hearts and the applause I'm seeing around the Zoom. Just thank you so much. And this was really special for our group to have today. And I think it's the perfect launch pad for the next portion of our meeting, which is moving to breakout groups. This is a chance for all of you to connect with other providers. And earlier in today's meeting, you all weighed in to give some input about which topics were most pressing for you or your organization or your clients. And the top 5 responses we received, and we're going to break out shortly, housing was another one. No surprise there. That continues to be a pressing need. Social isolation and loneliness is another topic that folks were putting high on the list. Transportation, local response. So if there's particular things you're seeing at your local community grassroots level that you want to address, and then also the winter response, seeing a need to talk about winter response. So Bistra, just so I have it correct, we're going to open up those breakout rooms now. Is that right? Okay. And everyone is welcome to choose which breakout room works the best for you. And last time we did have some folks who couldn't automatically join a breakout group. So if you have a preference and you can't seem to get connected, you can go ahead and go off mute, and Bistra can add you manually. But now we're back together as a larger group now, and we will do one more breakout session, which is a chance to connect with other local providers about any topics or issues that are most important to you or that you're seeing on the ground with clients today. but we just wanted to come back together to see if there was anything that folks wanted to share with the larger group, whether it's an event, a need that was identified, any aha moments that you had as a group. We just welcome sharing with the larger group. And Deqa is still here, if you can believe it. We were saying that she's one of the busiest people we know, but she's still here. So anything that folks want to share?
Hey. Hi, Megan. I want to just speak about our group. We were in the winter response group, and we just had a conversation about smaller grassroots organizations in different communities that may be working to help their residents of possibly reaching out to invite them to the exchange. And John Holland was in my group and mentioned a group as a organization in Gorham, the town that he lives in, of possibly reaching out to them if there's any other groups like that we could reach out to make us all aware and participate. That would be helpful.
Definitely. What a great thought. I mean, all of the age-friendly or lifelong communities too. That's what I'm thinking about in terms of grassroots efforts. So great suggestion. And then I see Meg has some comments, and also Mary.
Thank you. Yes, I was with the group that talked about social isolation and loneliness, and it, from the consensus of the group, it seems the biggest one of the areas that would be really helpful for everyone is, where to go to find the resources to help combat this concern in the community with older adults, and if there is a single point of reference possibly of things that we can do to help combat isolation. So
Great thought, Meg. And definitely something that I'm thinking about we could do from this end too, just what resources we already know about that are specifically addressing social isolation. Thank you. Mary, did you want to share?
Thank you. Thanks, Megan. So in our group, we were speaking towards the local response to older adults, and specifically thinking about in terms of emergency or disasters, and how would we identify those older adults in the communities, especially those that don't have an active age-friendly organization in progress. And so oftentimes we rely very heavily on the EMS within those communities to be reactive, but how can we coordinate and be proactive in identifying those older adults that would be able to reach out to in case of an emergency or a disaster? So it was we just really started to get to the heat of it when we switched over. So it's a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Mary. I think so many of us in the provider position feel that kind of urge and need to address people with the greatest need who are out there. Yeah. Anything else to share before we do one other quick breakout group? And by quick, Bistra, maybe we should do 8 minutes and then come back together as a group. We want to make sure everybody gets out on time. And we're going to do the same breakout room topic. So if there was one you just chose, then you'd like to choose something different, that would be great. And Bistra, is it going to be the same format to join like it was last time?
I just need 1 second to recreate the room so people can choose what other room they want to go to.
Perfect.
I can share one little tidbit quickly to give Bistra a moment or two. I was in the transportation group, and I was really excited to hear about the transportation model that Independent Seniors Network has in place that Carol was sharing with us, that they're volunteers. They handle all of the background checks, the training, and the references, the interviews themselves. And it just seemed like it's a model that's been suggested to our organization before, but it's sort of a leap into the unknown. And chatting with Carol about the model that her organization has implemented makes that unknown a little bit more known. So I was very appreciative of hearing about that.
Carol, anything else you want us to know about it? Thanks so much, Pam. Great update. And Carol, you're on mute, just so you know.
Sorry, I guess probably the biggest thing that I want to share is we have been operating for over 5 years with the name of Portland Area Villages. We just rebranded and changed our name to Independent Seniors Network because people didn't know what Portland Area Villages was or what they did. They thought we were, a senior development where all these little houses where seniors all lived, and it was just a little village, but that's not really what it is at all. We are a network of volunteers. We're run by volunteers, and the volunteers do all the services. We're always looking for volunteers. We need more people on the board because there's so many things we could do. And without the manpower, we can't, but I know everybody is suffering from the same lack of volunteers program, so. And I'd be very happy to have anybody reach out to us with questions. I know I've heard from a couple people, so.
Thanks so much, Carol. And a reminder too to folks that we're going to launch the email exchange in the coming week here. So we will send out an email to everybody on the call today who's interested, and other participants who were in the last 2 sessions who want to be part of the email, so that we can regularly share these resources and information, just so we're all in the loop. Beaster, are we ready for maybe?
We are ready.
Great. Okay. And are those breakout rooms open? It looks
Yes,
like
they're open for everybody.
perfect. So as you're ready, folks, feel free to join another breakout room. Everyone, welcome back to the large room. We are just at about time, so if you need to hop off to get on to your next meeting, we completely understand. Just wanted to say thank you so much for coming today. We will be on the line for the next 5 minutes or so if you have any reflections that you want to share from your breakout room, or any suggestions for our next meeting together. We have tentatively scheduled that our next meeting will actually be in January, so stay tuned for that invitation as well. And just a reminder that we're going to launch the email exchange, so bear with us as we work through some kinks, but we're excited to get this off the ground so we can share some resources between each other, and maybe even help some clients at the local level. Again, thank you to our speaker, to Deqa Dhalac. This was an amazing presentation for our team, and we so appreciate your time. And again, standing ovation if we could. And again, we'll be on if you have any questions or if there's anything you want to share as a group. But just thank you for joining us today, everyone. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Great.
Just a comment that it was really fun to meet the other folks at the meeting, especially in the breakout rooms. I thought that was really interesting. I learned about some interesting programs that are going on, and wrote down some future, hopefully useful and fun connections. And I'm really looking forward, Megan, to the holiday party, which I'm sure we're going to have at some point. Social event, right? All live, no Zoom. Yeah, well, dream on.
I know. Thanks, Bill, for sharing. Thanks so much for your continued participation. This was a great event. Happy to hear any other comments. I think one thing we were just noticing in the local response group is that there are so many local response groups. So how do we make sure that we as an agency are aware of them, but all of us as a community are aware of them? And I think Charlotte logged off, but that was the first. We also had somebody who was on a plane from Amsterdam to Boston and joined us for the exchange. So, wow, people really just want to gather and talk about this and get together and problem solve. That was definitely a first for us to have somebody airborne on the on the group. Anything else that folks want to share?
Just thank you for this forum. This was great.
Thanks, Pam. It was so awesome to have you here. I mean, it was, yeah.
You have
Oh, Ryan, we lost you. We only started to hear you speaking.
ideas for the next legislative.
Oh, Ryan, it sounds like a really important question. Oh, we lost him. Well, we will definitely follow up with him because it sounded like there might possibly be some information needed for the next legislative session. Was I the only one who heard that?
I
It
heard
might
that
have
too.
been my dream. Okay, you heard that too.
That was true. Yeah, that was it.
Great. Okay, well, we will follow up with the email and just appreciate everyone's time. Again, this was a great group and how fortunate we were to have Deqa today. It's really awesome. Take care, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye, Vistra.